It was a hot summer afternoon, and the sun was shining brightly over the small beach town where Samantha, or Sam, as her friends called her, spent her summer break. The town was quiet, far away from the noise of the big cities, and that was just how she liked it. Sam worked at a cozy beachside cafe, serving coffee, ice cream, and cold drinks to tourists and locals who came to enjoy the golden sands and ocean breeze. With her long brown hair tied back in a messy ponytail and her apron loosely hanging around her waist, Sam moved between the tables, balancing a tray of iced coffees. She glanced out at the beach every chance she got, secretly wishing she could jump into the waves like the kids running along the shore. But work came first. She needed the money for school. That afternoon, as she cleared a table by the window, a new customer walked in. Sam noticed him right away. He had that casual yet confident look that made him stand out. Dark, wavy hair, a pair of sunglasses hanging from the collar of his white shirt, and a relaxed smile that suggested he had nowhere else to be. "Hi," he said, his accent soft but unmistakably foreign. "Do you have a table with a view?" Sam smiled, gesturing to an empty table near the window. "Right this way." As she handed him the menu, she couldn't help but ask, "Where are you from? I can tell you're not from around here." "Good guess," he replied with a grin. "I'm Daniel, from Italy, just traveling around for the summer." Italy, of course. There was something about his laid-back charm and easy smile that seemed to fit with the idea of Italy, the place of romance, art, and adventure. Sam felt a small spark of excitement. She had never been outside the U.S., but meeting people from other places always made her dream of what life might be like beyond the borders of her small town. Throughout the afternoon, Daniel stayed at the cafe, sipping his iced coffee slowly as he watched the waves roll in. Whenever Sam had a free moment, they exchanged a few words, talking about the differences between American beaches and the Mediterranean, or the best places to get pizza. Their conversation flowed easily, filled with laughter and little jokes that made Sam's heart feel light. As the day grew longer, the cafe emptied out, and Sam finally had a chance to take her break. She grabbed an iced tea and, without overthinking it, sat down at Daniel's table. He looked up, surprised, but clearly pleased. "Taking a break?" he asked. "Yeah," Sam said, glancing at the clock. "I've got a few minutes. Mind if I join you?" "Not at all," he replied, leaning back in his chair with a playful smile. "I could use some company." They started talking again, but this time the conversation grew deeper. Sam learned that Daniel was not just a traveler, but also an artist. He carried a sketchbook everywhere he went, capturing the people and places that inspired him. He even showed her a quick sketch he had done of the beach outside the cafe. It was rough but beautiful, with quick, sure lines that brought the scene to life. "Wow," Sam breathed, staring at the drawing. "You're really talented." Daniel shrugged, though Sam could see the pride in his eyes. "It's just something I like to do. What about you? What's your passion?" Sam paused, surprised by the question. Most people didn't ask her that. She thought for a moment, then answered honestly, "I'm still trying to figure that out. I love photography, but I don't know if I'm good enough to make a career out of it." Daniel looked at her thoughtfully. "You never know until you try. Sometimes the best things in life come from taking a chance." Sam smiled, but a small part of her felt a pang of uncertainty. She admired Daniel's confidence, his willingness to go wherever life took him. Could she ever be like that? Or was she destined to stay in this small town, waiting tables and dreaming of something bigger? As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the beach, Daniel glanced at his watch. "I should probably get going," he said, standing up slowly. "I've got a bus to catch in the morning." Sam's heart sank a little. She had been enjoying his company so much that she hadn't realized the day was coming to an end. "Already?" she asked, trying to hide her disappointment. "Yeah, I'm heading back to Italy soon," Daniel said, pulling a small piece of paper from his pocket. "But hey, if you ever feel like an adventure, come find me." He scribbled something on the paper and handed it to her. "Here's my email and phone number. I don't know where I'll be next, but I'll always answer." Sam stared at the paper, feeling a strange mix of excitement and sadness. She had only just met him, but it felt like they had shared something special, something that didn't come around often. "Maybe I will," she said, tucking the note into her pocket with a smile. "Who knows?" Daniel gave her one last smile, then turned and walked out of the cafe, disappearing into the twilight. Sam watched him go, her mind swirling with thoughts of faraway places and new possibilities. She felt the wind from the ocean tug at her hair, whispering promises of adventures yet to come. For now, though, all she had was a note and a memory of a day she would never forget. The months after that summer day seemed to stretch endlessly. Samantha, or Sam as everyone called her, tried to focus on her classes, but her mind kept wandering back to that beachside cafe, the way the sun had reflected off the waves, and most of all, to Daniel. His easy smile, his quiet confidence, and the way he made everything feel like an adventure stayed with her like a memory she couldn't shake. She'd thought about texting or emailing him, but something always held her back. Fear, perhaps, that the magic of that day was a one-time thing. But as winter turned to spring and her semester came to an end, Sam felt restless. The idea of finding Daniel began to take root in her mind, growing stronger with each passing day. She had his contact information tucked away in a drawer, folded carefully next to her passport. The more she thought about it, the more the idea didn't seem so crazy. Why not? What was holding her back? She was young, free, and had no real obligations for the summer. So, one impulsive night, she made up her mind. "I'm going to Italy," she whispered to herself. Feeling a mix of excitement and terror, she booked the ticket the next day. A week later, Sam found herself standing in the bustling airport, clutching her small suitcase and a map she'd printed from the internet. Her heart was pounding with a mixture of excitement and nerves. It was her first time traveling alone, and she barely spoke a word of Italian. But she had Daniel's note, the address scribbled on it, and the memory of his invitation to come find me. The flight was long, and Sam barely slept. As the plane touched down in Italy, she felt a wave of anticipation wash over her. The small town she was headed to wasn't too far from the airport, but it felt like another world. Cobblestone streets, narrow alleys lined with colorful buildings, and the scent of fresh bread and espresso filled the air. Everywhere she looked, people were chatting animatedly in Italian, their gestures big and expressive. Sam navigated her way through the town with the help of her map, her heart pounding with each step. The address Daniel had given her led to a small family-owned restaurant. She stood outside for a moment, catching her breath. A faded sign hung above the door, and the scent of tomato sauce and basil drifted out into the street. She smiled, imagining Daniel working inside, maybe helping out with his family's business. Taking a deep breath, Sam pushed open the door. A little bell jingled overhead, announcing her arrival. The inside was cozy, with wooden tables and a small bar where a middle-aged man was wiping down glasses. Sam stepped up to him, suddenly aware of how far away she was from home and how crazy this whole idea might be. Excuse me," she said, her voice a little shaky. "Does Daniel work here?" The man looked up, his brow furrowing. "Daniel," he repeated in a thick Italian accent. He scratched his chin thoughtfully. No, No Daniel here. Sam felt her heart sink. Are you sure? Maybe he's a relative or used to work here. The man shook his head. No Daniel for many months, I think. He was here, but he's gone, moved on. He shrugged, as if that was all there was to it. Sam stared at him, trying to keep the disappointment from showing on her face. She had come all this way, traveled across an ocean, and now Daniel wasn't even here? It felt like the air had been sucked out of her lungs. Do you know where he went? Sam asked, her voice softer now. The man sighed and waved over a young woman who must have been his daughter. She came over and translated more fluently. My father says Daniel left a few months ago. He was here for the summer, helping out, but he's traveling now, moving from place to place. No one knows exactly where he is. Sam nodded slowly, the weight of their words sinking in. This trip, this wild adventure she had built up in her mind, suddenly seemed like a mistake. She thanked them quietly and stepped back out onto the street, the door closing behind her with a soft jingle. She stood there for a moment, her mind blank. The sun was setting, casting a golden light over the town, but Sam barely noticed. She had no idea where to go from here. The street was quieter now. Most of the tourists had moved on, and the locals were heading home for the night. Sam sat down on a nearby bench, pulling out the note from her pocket, the one Daniel had given her. She stared at it, reading his words over and over again. Come find me someday. But how? He could be anywhere. As she sat there, watching the town lights flicker on, one by one, Sam felt the sharp sting of disappointment. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. She had imagined finding Daniel, reuniting, and maybe even sharing another magical day like they had that summer. But now she was alone, thousands of miles from home, and with no real way of knowing where to go next. But then, as the cool evening breeze swept through the narrow streets, Sam realized something. This was part of the adventure, wasn't it? She had come all this way, taken a leap of faith, and even though things hadn't gone as planned, that didn't mean it was the end. She was in Italy, a place she had always dreamed of visiting. Maybe finding Daniel wasn't the point. Maybe this was about something more. With a new sense of determination, Sam stood up, stuffing the note back into her pocket. She wasn't ready to give up just yet. She would stay a while longer, explore the town, and maybe, just maybe, she'd find a clue about where Daniel had gone. Or maybe she would discover something even better, something about herself. Either way, she wasn't leaving yet. This was her adventure, and it was only just beginning. The next few days in Italy felt like a blur to Sam, but in the best way possible. Determined not to let the initial disappointment break her spirit, she embraced her surroundings and the journey ahead. With nothing more than a map and her curiosity, she set out to explore the Italian countryside, chasing any lead she could find about Daniel. Each morning, she woke up early, grabbing a cappuccino at the corner cafe before heading out. The sun was warm, but not too hot, and the rolling hills, vineyards, and ancient stone buildings made every step feel like part of an old, forgotten story. Sam marveled at how the countryside seemed untouched by time. The air was fresher here, the colors brighter. Everywhere she looked, there was beauty. Olive groves, fields of sunflowers, and rows of grapevines stretching out into the distance. At first, she wasn't sure where to begin her search, but soon enough, Sam discovered that the people in small towns were kind and always ready to help. She wandered from village to village, asking about Daniel whenever she stopped for a meal or stayed at a small inn. Most of the time, the people she spoke with didn't know him, but they offered her friendly advice, shared stories, or pointed her toward another town where she might find more information. One evening, While sitting outside a tiny restaurant under a canopy of twinkling fairy lights, Sam met an older woman named Lucia. The two of them shared a table, and soon they were deep in conversation. Lucia spoke in broken English, but it was enough for them to communicate. As the sun set, casting a warm glow over the cobblestone streets, Lucia listened to Sam's story with a gentle smile. "You are looking for a boy you met in America?" Lucia asked, her eyes twinkling. "Yes," Sam replied, laughing softly at how it sounded when she said it aloud. "It sounds a little crazy, I know." Lucia shrugged, sipping her wine. "Life is full of crazy things, but they make the best stories. Maybe you find him, maybe not. Either way, you are on your own adventure now. This is your story." Her words stayed with Sam long after their conversation ended. Lucia didn't seem to think it mattered whether or not Sam found Daniel. What mattered was that Sam had dared to follow her heart, to take a chance. As the days passed, Sam began to understand what Lucia meant. With each step she took, Sam felt herself changing. She was growing more confident, more certain of her ability to navigate this unfamiliar world. She spoke more Italian now, simple phrases, but enough to get by. She wasn't just a tourist anymore. She was part of the landscape, weaving her way through narrow streets, blending in with the rhythm of the local life. One morning, while wandering through yet another sun-soaked village, Sam stumbled upon a small art gallery. The bright paintings in the window caught her eye, and she stepped inside, feeling the cool air wash over her. As she moved between the paintings, admiring the vivid colors and sweeping landscapes, she noticed something that stopped her in her tracks. There, tucked in the corner, was a familiar sketch, Daniel's unmistakable style. It was rough, but the lines, the way he captured movement and emotion, were undeniably his. Sam felt a rush of excitement and disbelief. "Excuse me," she said, approaching the gallery owner, an older man with a kind face. "Do you know the artist of this piece?" The man looked at the sketch, then nodded. "Ah, yes. That was left here a few months ago by a young traveler. He was passing through, and I asked if I could keep one of his sketches. I believe he was heading to a coastal village not too far from here." Sam's heart raced. This was the clue she had been waiting for. "Do you remember the name of the village?" she asked, trying to contain her excitement. The man smiled and nodded again. "Porto Verde. It's a quiet place, right by the sea. You can get there by bus. It's not far." Sam thanked him and quickly made her way back to her small hotel room. She couldn't believe it. Finally, after days of searching, she had a lead. Porto Verde. The name alone sounded like something out of a dream, a place where the ocean met the sky, where perhaps, just perhaps, Daniel might be waiting. The next morning, Sam boarded the bus with her small backpack slung over her shoulder. The journey was short, but each mile felt like a step closer to something important, something she couldn't quite name. She gazed out the window as the landscape changed from rolling hills to cliffs overlooking the sea. The water shimmered in the sunlight, endless and blue. When the bus finally pulled into Porto Verde, Sam stepped off, taking in the salty breeze and the sound of waves crashing against the rocky shore. The village was small and peaceful, with narrow streets winding down toward the harbor. Boats bobbed gently in the water, and the smell of fresh seafood filled the air. Sam had no idea where to start, but the hope she felt was enough to push her forward. She began to explore, asking locals if they had seen a young man matching Daniel's description. The responses were vague, some people shrugging, others offering small clues. "Maybe I saw him a few weeks ago," or "He was here for a short time, but I haven't seen him lately." Still, Sam pressed on, her determination growing stronger with each passing hour. The village was beautiful, and even though the search for Daniel wasn't as straightforward as she had hoped, Sam found herself enjoying the journey in a way she hadn't expected. By late afternoon, she made her way down to the beach, her feet sinking into the soft sand as she gazed out at the horizon. The sky was a deep shade of orange now, the sun beginning to set. For the first time in days, Sam allowed herself to pause, to take in the beauty of the moment. Even if she didn't find Daniel, this view, this feeling, made everything worth it. But just as she was about to turn back, something caught her eye. A figure, sitting on the rocks near the water, sketching in a familiar notebook. Sam's heart skipped a beat. Could it be? Without thinking, she started walking toward the figure, her footsteps quickening with each step. Sam's heart pounded as she walked across the beach, the soft sand slipping under her feet. The figure sitting by the water, his back to her, looked so familiar. She had dreamed about this moment for weeks, but now that it was happening, she felt an unexpected flutter of nerves. What would she say to him? Would he even remember her? The waves crashed against the shore, filling the air with a salty mist. Sam's footsteps grew quicker as she neared the rocks. Finally, when she was only a few feet away, the figure looked up, startled by her approach. It was Daniel. He blinked, his eyes widening in surprise. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The ocean roared behind them, the sound of the waves filling the silence. Sam's mind raced as she tried to gather her thoughts. He looked the same as he had that summer, dark hair tousled by the breeze, his eyes warm and curious, though there was something different in them now, something heavier. "Sam?" Daniel finally said, his voice full of disbelief. "Hey, Daniel," Sam replied, her voice shaking slightly with the rush of emotions. She hadn't thought about what she would say when she found him. It's been a while." Daniel stood up slowly, still staring at her as if he couldn't quite believe what he was seeing. He was taller than she remembered, or maybe it was just the difference in setting that made him seem more grounded, more real. For a few seconds they just stood there, neither of them sure what to say. "You came all the way here?" Daniel finally asked, a half smile forming on his lips. "To Italy?" Sam nodded, feeling a little awkward, but trying to keep her voice light. "Yeah, I told you I might find you one day, didn't I?" Daniel let out a soft laugh, rubbing the back of his neck. "You did. I just didn't expect you to actually do it." Sam smiled, the tension between them easing a little. "Well, I guess I like surprises." They stood there for a few moments longer, the initial shock wearing off. Daniel motioned for her to sit down on the rocks next to him, and Sam did, settling in beside him. The sea stretched out before them, endless and calm, as the sun began to dip lower on the horizon, casting everything in shades of gold and pink. "So, what brings you here, Sam?" Daniel asked, looking at her more closely now. His tone was casual, but there was something cautious in his voice, as if he already knew there was more to her visit than just a coincidence. Sam hesitated for a second, trying to find the right words. "I couldn't stop thinking about you," she admitted, her voice soft. "After that day at the cafe, I kept wondering, what if? What if I didn't come looking for you? What if we never saw each other again?" Daniel sighed, looking out at the water. His smile faded, replaced by a more serious expression. "I get it, Sam. I've thought about you too. That day was something special. But life here, it's different." Sam's heart sank a little at his tone, but she stayed quiet, waiting for him to continue. "When we met in the U.S., I was just traveling, carefree, no responsibilities," Daniel said, his voice thoughtful. "But here, I have family obligations. I work with my parents, helping them run the business. It's not the kind of life you'd expect. It's simple, but it's not easy. My life isn't just about art and adventure anymore." He paused, as if searching for the right way to explain. "I wasn't completely honest with you back then," he added. "I didn't tell you about my family because, honestly, I wanted to forget about it for a little while. I wanted to be someone else, someone free. That day, I felt like I could be that person with you." Sam listened, her chest tightening with every word. She had imagined this moment so many times, but this was not the story she had expected to hear. "Things have changed," Daniel continued, glancing at her briefly before looking away again. "I'm tied to this place, my family's restaurant. It's my responsibility now. I can't just leave, even though sometimes I wish I could. I'm sorry, Sam. I know that's not what you came here to hear." For a moment, Sam couldn't find the words. She had traveled across the world, hoping to rekindle the connection they had shared. But now it was clear that Daniel's life was more complicated than she had ever imagined. The carefree traveler she had met was no more. "It's okay," she said finally, her voice quiet but steady. "I understand. I didn't expect things to stay the same. I guess I didn't realize how much would be different." Daniel nodded, his expression softening. "I didn't want to disappoint you." "You didn't," Sam said quickly, shaking her head. "You're just being honest. I'm glad you told me." They sat in silence for a while, the sound of the waves crashing softly against the rocks. Sam felt a strange mixture of sadness and relief. In a way, this was closure. She had come here hoping to find the same Daniel she had met that summer. But what she found instead was a man grounded in the realities of life, torn between his desires and his duties. "You'll stay in Puerto Verde for a while, right?" Daniel asked, breaking the silence. "Yeah," Sam replied, smiling a little. "I think I will. There's still so much to see, and maybe we can catch up as friends." Daniel smiled back, the tension between them easing. "I'd like that." As they sat together, watching the last light of the day fade into the horizon, Sam realized that their summer encounter had been just that, a fleeting moment. It wasn't meant to be the foundation for something more, and that was okay. What mattered now was that she had come all this way, not just to find Daniel, but to find herself, to understand that life wasn't about holding on to a single moment, but about embracing the journey, no matter where it led. The next few days in Puerto Verde felt like a slow exhale, as if Sam had been holding her breath for weeks and finally let it out. The weight of her expectations had lifted, replaced by a sense of calm. She hadn't found what she'd come to Italy for, but in a way, she had found something even more valuable: clarity. After her conversation with Daniel, she spent her days wandering the village, exploring the hidden corners and quiet streets she had overlooked before. There was a peaceful rhythm to life here that she hadn't noticed when she first arrived. The locals went about their business with unhurried steps, always stopping to chat with neighbors or greet tourists with a warm buongiorno. Sam no longer asked about Daniel in the places she visited. She had accepted that chapter was over. Instead, she focused on herself, allowing the beauty of the Italian countryside to heal the restlessness she had carried with her from the U.S. One afternoon, while walking through a colorful market, Sam came across a group of young artists painting in the town square. Their easels were set up near a fountain, and the air was filled with the sound of brushes against canvas and the quiet chatter of creativity. Sam paused, watching them with interest. She hadn't touched her camera since arriving in Italy, but seeing these artists at work sparked something inside her. Without thinking, she pulled out her phone and began snapping photos of the artists, of the vibrant fruits in the market, of the old buildings bathed in sunlight. Each picture felt like a piece of the story she was living, a way to capture the moment without holding onto it too tightly. That evening, Sam uploaded the photos to her laptop and spent hours editing them, losing herself in the process. As she worked, she realized something important. Photography had always been her passion, but she had been too afraid to truly commit to it. She had spent so much time waiting for a sign, for someone to tell her she was good enough, that she hadn't allowed herself to fully dive into her art. But now, with Italy as her backdrop and the freedom to explore without expectations, she finally felt ready. The next few weeks flew by in a blur of new experiences. Sam met other travelers at the small bed and breakfast where she was staying. They came from all over the world, Australia, Japan, Brazil, and each had their own story of adventure and self-discovery. Together, they explored nearby towns, hiked through the rolling hills, and shared meals at local trattorias, laughing late into the night over plates of pasta and bottles of wine. In those moments, Sam realized how much she had grown since leaving home. She no longer felt the need to chase after something or someone. Instead, she was content to let the adventure unfold naturally, knowing that each new experience was part of her own journey. One evening, sitting with her new friends by the harbor, watching the boats bob gently in the water, Sam felt a deep sense of peace. The sunset painted the sky in brilliant shades of pink and orange, and the sea stretched out before them, endless and full of possibilities. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't thinking about what came next. She was simply enjoying the moment. Eventually, the time came for Sam to return to the USA. She packed her bags with a bittersweet feeling, knowing that while she was ready to go home, she would carry a piece of Italy with her forever. The experiences, the people, the lessons, it had all shaped her in ways she hadn't anticipated. As she boarded the plane, Sam reflected on how much had changed since she first arrived in Italy. She had come here searching for Daniel, but what she had really been searching for was herself. Now, with her camera in hand and her heart lighter, she felt ready to take on whatever came next. Back in the U.S., the familiar sights and sounds of home welcomed Sam, but she was different now. The small beach town where she had spent her summer break felt both comforting and new, like she was seeing it through fresh eyes. The ocean still roared against the shore. The cafe still bustled with tourists, but Sam had grown, stronger, more independent, and more certain of the path she wanted to take. On her first day back, Sam returned to the cafe where she had met Daniel all those months ago. The same warm breeze carried the scent of salt and seaweed, and the sun shimmered on the horizon. She stood at the entrance for a moment, feeling the waves of nostalgia wash over her. This was where it had all started, her journey, her adventure. But this time, Sam wasn't waiting for someone to show up. She wasn't waiting for a sign. Instead, she walked inside, ordered an iced coffee, and took a seat by the window, the same seat where Daniel had sat, smiling at the ocean. As she sipped her drink, Sam pulled out her notebook and began jotting down ideas for her next project, a photography series inspired by her time in Italy. She didn't have all the details worked out yet, but that was okay. For once, she didn't need to have all the answers. As the sun set outside the window, casting a golden light over the beach, Sam smiled to herself. The journey might have started with Daniel, but it had led her somewhere far more important. She was ready now, ready to embrace whatever life had in store for her, knowing that the real adventure was just beginning.